levels of wastewater for shortish periods of time. However, for Dam 3 the pond was often full to the brim. During the construction of the dam, trees and vegetation were not removed and instead just covered over with coal waste, forming part of the upstream and downstream faces. Not only that, but the waste had a foundation of sludge roughly around 50 feet thick. For comparison, Dam 2 had a sludge base of 100 feet thick. No segregation, layering or zoning of the material used to build Dam number 3 was undertaken to obtain maximum stability. No type of spillway was built into the design, instead relying on excess water seepage through the dam augmented by an overflow pipe. Another dam, number 4, built further up the fork, was around 200 feet long and had a crest of 40 feet over its highest side. This construction did have a spillway, however. This brings us on to the 22nd of February 1972 and a clean bit of health of dam number 3 from the Federal Coal Mine Inspector, but not more than 4 days later the structure would experience a total failure. In the following days, the region would experience rain showers. Worrying about the increase in Dam 3's pool water level, company strip mine superintendent Jack Kent checked the levels with a measuring stick at the lowest portion of the dam on the 24th of February. He discovered that the water stood just 5 feet below the dam's crest. The rains continued, and the following day the level increased by 1 to 2 inches per hour. At 4:30 AM on the 26th, Kent found his measuring stick almost covered, with the water just 12 inches below the lowest part of the dam's crest. More worryingly, the face of the dam was now oozing moisture. At 5:30 AM, warnings were sent out to the local population by the Sheriff's Office. Half an hour later, a team led by Kent went to the dam to attempt to create a relief pipe to try to reduce the water level. The water from this pipe flowed over Dam 2, but would prove to be too little too late. Leading up to 8 AM, the dam began to subside and slump, allowing water to top over the crest. At 8:05 AM, dam number 3 failed, washing dams number 1 and 2 away. The wall of water flooded the burning refuse dump, causing an explosion. The effluents carried on down the fork to the valley of Buffalo Creek. The flow of water further eroded the remains of dam number 3, increasing the speed of the release. Drainage of the pool continued until around 8:30 AM. Around 6 million cubic feet of coal waste and other debris was carried downstream, with around 90% of it escaping the middle fork, with some reaching a distance of up to 2 miles. A 10 to 20 foot high flood wave travelled along the 15-mile Buffalo Creek Valley at an average speed of around 5 miles per hour, finally reaching the town of Man at around 11 AM. The disaster destroyed or damaged homes in Saunders, Hardy, Lorado, Lundale, Stowe, Latrobe, Robinette, Amherstdale, Becco, Banco, Greyholm, Acoville, Crown and Kistler. In the immediate aftermath, the disaster rescue operations and accurate reporting of the dead and missing were made difficult as access to the area by road had been disrupted, with bridges destroyed and rail lines blocked or flooded. 125 were killed and 1,121 were injured, and over 500 homes were uninhabitable, leaving between 4,000 and 5,000 people homeless or without adequate shelter. Man High School was used as a temporary refugee location for Buffalo Creek survivors. Republican Governor Arch Moore announced the creation of a commission of inquiry to investigate the flood. It was formed of 9 members, most of whom were sympathetic to the coal industry. In response, a citizens' commission was set up to create an independent review of the disaster. Also, the Senate Subcommittee on Labour started an investigation in late May 1972, using experts from the US Army Corps of Engineers, who built a scale model of the valley, including locations of the failed dams. With so much destruction and death, and an estimated damage cost in excess of $65 million, how did dam number 3 fail so catastrophically? Well, much like the Kelly Barnes Dam, which would fail 5 years later, the banks in the Middle Fork didn't have an official design, meaning construction was not to a uniform standard and was not properly inspected and maintained. A United States Department of the Interior report highlighted 5 key causes for the failure of dam number 3. The first was that the dam was not built to withstand the amount of water in the pool. This was due to the construction basically being a pile of dumped coal waste. No spillway or other adequate water level controls were built into the dam, On top of that, there was no way for removing water once it had entered the pool behind the dam. The small pipe installed during the evolution of the dam was insufficient and was too high to really make a difference. Third, the sludge on which the dam was placed was inadequate, as the foundation led to seepage and subsidence across the main structure. Fourth, the width of the dam was cited as an issue, as it impeded any water through the bank, leading to a larger than intended amount of water being held back. This was because the dam was meant to be for water recycling instead of permanent retention. And finally, the fifth cause was the inadequate quality and grading of construction material, which consisted of coal waste, including fine coal, shale, clay and mined rubbish. Furthermore, the pipe that had been placed inside the dam, the one that was too high to make any difference, also had a double failure of weakening the already poor material choice. The ad hoc committee focused on improving legislation, recommending all dams or impoundments constructed of coal refuse to be properly zoned for control of seepage rates, requiring all dams or impoundments higher than 10 feet to be instrumented and monitored on a regular and frequent basis, and requiring all dams or impoundments to have a foolproof decant systems and or spillways designed by and constructed under the direction of a registered professional engineer with a completion in the design and construction of dams. The citizens' investigation was far more damning of the Buffalo Mining Company and its later owners, the Pittston Coal Group, stating in its conclusions, the company was grossly negligent in constructing and operating the refuse dam on its property. The company violated state and federal law since the dam was never approved for proper design and maintenance. And the company's first concern has been to increase its profits by using the same refuse dam to dispose of clarified wastewater and store water. Needless to say, the mining company would have a number of lawsuits to answer to. In an attempt to absolve itself of any blame, Pittston Coal put out a press release not long after the flood, stating that the disaster was an act of God and the dam was incapable of holding the water God poured into it. Around 600 survivors of the flood sued Pittston Coal Company, seeking $64 million. A settlement was later reached in June 1974 at a fraction of the cost of $13.4 million, roughly $82 million in today's money. Another lawsuit brought on behalf of the child survivors, which was again settled in June 74 for $4.8 million, around $29 million today. The state of West Virginia also took Pittston to court for a $100 million lawsuit to cover disaster and relief damages. But Governor Arch A. Moore settled the case for a measly $1 million 3 days before leaving office in 1977. Moore had been accused during his time as governor of corruption, and this settlement didn't do much to disprove it. This left a bill of around $9 million to be picked up by the state of West Virginia to pay the US Army Corps of Engineers for recovery operations. And what seems to be a very foul-tasting trend with disasters of this type, no criminal charges were brought against the company for their negligence. We know the lessons were never properly learnt from Buffalo Creek, as the Kingston fly ash spill would happen some 36 years later. And there are still many coal impoundments that offer risk to the communities that live nearby. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is a Plain Difficult production. All videos on the channel are Creative Commons Share Attribution Alike licensed. Plain Difficult videos are produced by me, John, in a sunny southeastern corner of London, UK. Help the channel grow by liking, commenting and subscribing. Check out my Twitter for all sorts of photos and odds and sods, as well as hints on future videos. I've got a Patreon and YouTube membership account if you'd like to support the channel financially. And all that's left to say is thank you for watching.
You should run.
Plant the spike.
Natural disasters have been a fear of mankind throughout history, from a volcano near Pompeii to an earthquake in the Pacific Ocean. A natural disaster can devastate a whole region, causing mayhem and destruction in its wake. A deadly earthquake and resulting tsunami off the coast of Japan would result in nearly 20,000 missing and dead, a country economically wounded,
One enemy
and a
remaining.
chain of events that would cause a nuclear disaster on a scale which the world had not seen since Chernobyl. If you like what we do here at Plainly Difficult,
Spike down
consider
A.
helping the channel grow by liking, commenting and subscribing. Let's get started.
30 seconds left.
We have covered many reactor incidents on this channel. However, something that makes today's subject unique is that the damage to equipment and the environment is worse than anything else I've covered on this channel. Needless to say, today we are going to dive into the Fukushima disaster. I'm going to rate this event here on the Plainly Difficult disaster scale, which is higher than the INES, which rated it at a 7, the same level as Chernobyl. So that obviously means that my rating scale is better.
Don't let them get up.
The Fukushima Daiichi NPP site lies approximately 220 kilometers north of Tokyo. At almost the midpoint of the Pacific coast, it straddles Okuma and Futaba townships in Fukushima Prefecture, which is around here on the map. The site is approximately 3.5 kilometers large. It is operated and managed by Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO. The site houses 6 boiling water reactors, 3 built by General Electric, 2 by Toshiba and 1 by Hitachi, although all were designed by GE. Construction on the site began in 1967 on Unit 1, with its commercial operation beginning in 1972. For the next 7 years, the remaining 5 units came online, with Unit 6 commissioned in October 1979. During the 12 years between 1967 and 1979, BWR design improvements led to variations between the 6 units on the site. After Unit 1, which was an earlier BWR-3 design, Units 2 to 5 were BWR-4 designs, and Unit 6 was a BWR-5 design. Because of this, the power outputs of the 3 designs were different, with Unit 1 having 460 megawatts of electricity, Units 2 to 5 having 784 megawatts of electricity, and Unit 6 having 1100 megawatts of electricity. Fukushima Daiichi plant is connected to the power grid by 4 lines: the 500 kilovolt Futaba line, the 2 275 kilovolt Okuma lines, and the 66 kilovolt Yonomori line to the Shin Fukushima substation. The site was built on a bluff 25 metres above sea level. Originally it was intended to be at 35 metres, however the designers lowered the height to reduce the strain on seawater pumps, as well as making the foundations closer to stable bedrock, which helps keep the plant more earthquake resistant. This lowered height was thought to be tsunami safe in conjunction with an adequate seawall. The reactors on site were in 2 groups. The first, when looking at the station from the sea, contains units 4, 3, 2 and 1 going from left to right. The rightmost group contains units 5 and 6. Like all commercial nuclear reactors, the end goal is the generation of heat for the purpose of making steam. This is used to drive a turbine, which then generates electricity. Right, before we dive into the disaster, let's have a look at how a boiling water reactor works, as this type of reactor is not often covered on this channel. For the purpose of simplicity, this is a general overview of how the GE BWRs work. However, there were many variations between the 3 types used at the site. A BWR design uses demineralized light water for both cooling and moderation, much like a pressure reactor. This type of reactor is the second most common type after the PWR. However, unlike a PWR, which uses the heat of the coolant to create steam in a secondary coolant loop, in a BWR the boiling of the primary coolant is used for the steam. The steam is collected in the top of the reactor